The calendar showed February 5th, 1996. Jasmine Porter, 36, lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx with her 4-year-old son, Jeremy. That night, the silence of the apartment was broken by screams. Neighbors immediately called the police, but it took 24 hours for the police to arrive. When the police opened the door, Jeremy was sitting silently over his mother. Jasmine Porter had been brutally beaten, abused, and strangled to death. When detectives arrived at the scene, they noticed that the house had been meticulously cleaned. However, the signs of a struggle were too obvious to be erased. Jasmine had deep wounds on her body. The most tragic detail was that Jeremy tried for hours to wake his mother. He had put ice on her, hoping that she would wake up. Jeremy, the only eyewitness to the incident, answered the police's questions vaguely. The little boy told the police that there was a man on top of his mother. Detectives questioned everyone in the neighborhood, but the killer could not be found. The Porter case had a wide impact on the American public. Despite all the lack of evidence, authorities followed a small lead in May 1996 and arrested a man they determined was near the house on the day of the incident. However, on the day of the trial, the eyewitness who identified the defendant admitted that he was wrong about the person who was caught, and the man was acquitted. The case was shelved due to the unreliable testimony of the only witness and the lack of evidence. The phone of Detective Robert Klein, who became famous for solving cold cases, rang for a long time in the cold winter of 2021, 25 years after the murder. The person on the other end of the line was a Bronx prosecutor. The prosecutor, who heard people talking about Jasmine Porter and the details of the murder in prison, wanted the file to be taken off the shelf. He wanted Klein to come to him immediately to solve the murder. When Klein examined the file, he noticed that the details were written between the lines of the forensic report. In addition to the information that Porter was 6 months pregnant, there were signs that she had struggled with the killer. Tissue fragments were found under the woman's fingernails, but these samples were not examined. Questioning how such a huge negligence had been overlooked, Klein thought that, if he could get to the tissue samples, he could reach the killer with a detailed DNA analysis. Detective Klein, who examined the reports in detail, narrowed down the list of suspects to 2 people. Then came the highly anticipated news from forensics. On Thanksgiving Day 2021, experts reached the results of the tissue samples. The results were also a surprise for Klein, because the tissue found under Porter's fingernails belonged to Gregory Fleetwood, whose name was not mentioned in the case file, and who had previously been tried on harassment charges. Detective Klein, who investigated Fleetwood, realized as his investigation progressed that he was dealing with a terrible criminal. He determined that Fleetwood, who had been released from prison in 1984, had committed similar crimes many times before, but somehow Fleetwood had gotten away with them all. Klein spoke to Fleetwood's other victims and noticed similarities in the crimes. Now he was sure. In the summer of 2022, Detective Klein managed to piece together all the clues in the case. On August 8th, teams following an unlicensed vehicle discovered Fleetwood entering his home near the Bronx, 8 kilometers from where Porter was killed. The police detained the cold-blooded killer as he left his house. There was nothing more to say. Klein asked the old man, "Are you ready to answer for the Porter murder?" Fleetwood, then 66, looked at Klein with calm and astonished eyes. Fleetwood is now 69 years old. His trial is ongoing. He will most likely receive life in prison. Jeremy Porter, who is now 33 years old, has the peace of mind of knowing that his mother's killer will finally be tried. Detective Klein says justice is sometimes delayed but never lost. Jasmine Porter's soul is finally at peace. If you want to see more true stories like this, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel.